The first sound wasn't a scream. It was a crash, sharp, metallic, final, echoing down the cul-de-sac like a gunshot. I dropped the wrench I'd been using to fix the porch light and ran. By the time I hit the street, the neighbors were frozen in their driveways. And there, in front of the HOA president's brand new Range Rover, lay my son's wheelchair, twisted, one wheel still spinning. This is a story about how evidence became a weapon. Subscribe for more narratives where justice is served, one detail at a time. He was 15, cerebral palsy but sharp as a tack. He'd been feeding the stray cat that slept near the sidewalk, the same patch of public property that Karen Mitchell, our HOA president, had declared her landscaping zone. She'd ordered everyone not to trespass on the greenbelt. She'd even staked little metal signs into the soil like trophies. And now she stood behind the wheel, phone in hand, voice trembling but not with guilt, with anger. "He shouldn't have been there," she said. "I told you people about boundaries. My knees hit the asphalt beside my son." He wasn't breathing. The cat was gone. The sirens came slow, like they were afraid to arrive. The police took statements. Karen spun her version fast. Blind spot, low light, tragic accident. The HOA board circled her immediately. By morning, the incident report called it a misunderstanding. 2 days later, a landscaping crew replaced the entire section of sidewalk with fresh concrete. The bloodstains were gone. So was the wheelchair, but I wasn't gone. 10 years in the Navy SEALs teaches you one thing: nothing vanishes without a trace. I started small, doorbell cams, my own dash footage, timeline reconstruction. At 1942 hours, Karen's Range Rover had accelerated from a full stop to 24 miles per hour in a 10-yard span before impact. No braking. Then I checked the HOA security feed. Karen had ordered the footage deleted due to privacy. I filed a request under Bylaw 6.3.2, access to records. The HOA ignored it, so I sent a certified letter quoting State Statute 452.15, which makes record destruction during an active police inquiry a Class B felony. Funny thing, the footage reappeared the next day, frame by frame. It showed her swerving not away from my son's wheelchair, but toward it. The timestamp aligned with her text message to the HOA treasurer. "If that kid doesn't stay off the lawn, I'll handle it myself." I printed everything. Chain of custody intact. That week, the HOA held its usual Tuesday meeting. Folding chairs, cheap coffee, Karen presiding like a queen over her fiefdom. When I walked in, the room went silent. "I'm here under open meeting rights," I said, placing a manila folder on the table. "Section 5.4, attendance," she smirked. "This isn't the place for—" "It's exactly the place," I interrupted. Inside the folder, stills from the footage, phone records, and a notarized statement from our neighbor, Mr. Lopez, who'd seen the entire thing from his garage. Karen's fingers started to shake. "You can't use this. This is harassment." "No," I said quietly. "It's evidence." That night she filed a harassment claim against me, claimed I'd intimidated her in a public meeting. So I went by the book. I called my attorney, Lisa Greer, former JAG officer, expert in property law and wrongful death. "Lisa," I said, "I need to go from grief to action, quietly." Her answer was calm. "Then we start the audit. Everything under HOA jurisdiction is fair game." We began with the HOA's insurance policy. Karen had forged renewal documents. The liability coverage had lapsed 2 weeks before the accident, meaning the HOA board itself could be personally liable. Next came the maintenance logs. The private cameras were actually installed using HOA funds, making them community property, public records under the Sunshine Statute. Every deleted clip was recoverable. Every text subpoena-ready. The night before the funeral, I sat on my porch watching the new concrete dry where my son had fallen. Streetlights hummed overhead. Somewhere down the block, Karen's motion lights flicked on. I didn't plan revenge. I planned documentation, and the first step was already done. She'd buried herself in a cover-up I could prove line by line. I closed my notebook. 10 minutes, I whispered. That's all it took. 10 minutes to lose him. 10 minutes more to know exactly what I was going to do next. The morning after the funeral, I put on a pair of gloves and went to work. Not out of rage, methodically. Each step precise. Every action recorded. First, the cameras. Doorbell cams, dash cams, and even a neighbor's Wi-Fi-enabled motion sensor. I downloaded every clip from the last 2 weeks, each frame a time-stamped witness. Karen had tried to delete incriminating files from her HOA account, but backups were automatic, stored off-site. Next, GPS. Her Range Rover had a factory tracker. I subpoenaed location data via police cooperation, not for vigilante justice, but to establish pattern and intent. The vehicle had circled my street multiple times over 2 weeks, often pausing near where my son played. Emails came next. The HOA's server logs showed deleted messages flagged for administrative review. My IT expert, Jamie, recovered them. Karen had written repeatedly about handling nuisances and ensuring boundaries are respected at all costs. The wording was cold, detached, but precise. At the same time, I started reviewing bylaws. Section 4.1 of the HOA Governing Code defined common area, specifically stating that no homeowner could unilaterally enforce penalties or remove persons from publicly accessible zones. Karen had ignored it repeatedly. Every violation she issued, including the infamous No Children on Lawn order, was technically illegal. I compiled all recovered footage, GPS logs, emails, and bylaw sections into a single evidence packet. Each item numbered, each timestamp verified. Chain of custody maintained. Then came allies. Lisa Greer, my attorney, drafted a formal complaint and prepared a subpoena for the HOA board. Deputy Torres, my neighbor, verified the accident site, noting tire marks and gravel displacement consistent with the footage. Licensed surveyor, Dr. Patel, confirmed the wheelchair's path had remained within public easement. Even the local regulator, a civil code inspector, confirmed that Karen's actions violated multiple state statutes, from endangering a minor to falsifying HOA records. Together, we had a blueprint, recover the evidence, uncover every bylaw and statutory violation, verify everything with experts, and finally, expose the truth to the public. I knew Karen would try to spin this. The HOA board had already whispered that she might blame contractors or even my family. But I wasn't relying on conjecture. Every step was documented, every fact cross-checked. I set up motion-triggered cameras in a subtle stakeout pattern around the property. Within hours, Karen emerged, phone in hand, muttering about neighbors overstepping. I logged everything, her precise words, her movements, the Range Rover's ignition times. Then came the first sting, a late-night inspection. Karen thought she could sneak into the common area to plant evidence, probably to argue the accident was my fault. Instead, she triggered the motion cams. Every action recorded. Light steps, even her fumbled attempts to erase footage. The irony was delicious. She had trained herself for control, but technology had her precisely where she didn't belong. Exposed. By the end of the week, my evidence packet had grown heavier than the grief I carried. But I wasn't reckless. The aim wasn't vengeance in the street. It was justice on paper. Undeniable, meticulous, and public emails were printed, GPS maps layered, footage segmented by timestamps, expert affidavits notarized. Even the HOA's insurance documents showing lapsed coverage were bound into the folder. And still, Karen acted like she was untouchable. Her arrogance was her undoing. The HOA newsletter had already boasted about her track record in maintaining property standards. Soon, she'd be on record defending herself to the exact same people who now held the law in their hands. The day before the public meeting, I rehearsed my presentation. Not with anger, but precision. Every slide, every still, every clause memorized. Every potential counter-argument anticipated. I imagined her smirk, her dismissive tone, the subtle shaking of her hands as she realized this wasn't rumor, wasn't hearsay, wasn't opinion. It was proof. And when I finally stood in front of the board, every neighbor watching, every eye on me, I would speak calmly, methodically, and leave no room for her lies, because sometimes the most powerful weapon is not the one that strikes first, but the one that strikes irrefutably. Tuesday morning, the community room smelled like cheap coffee and polished linoleum, folding chairs arranged in neat rows. Karen Mitchell already seated at the head table, her posture rigid, pearls gleaming, smile tight. She thought she was untouchable. I knew otherwise. I walked in with my folder, thick, weighty, official-looking. No theatrics, no shouting, just proof. Everyone turned their heads, Phones went quiet. The room smelled of tension like before a storm breaks. "Good morning," I said, calm but deliberate. "I am here under Section 5(4) of our HOA bylaws, open meeting attendance. And I have something that cannot be ignored." Karen's smirk faltered. "This is inappropriate. It's evidence," I corrected, placing the folder on the table. "Not opinion. Not rumor. Evidence." I opened with stills from the motion-triggered cameras. Frames froze her Range Rover in mid-swerve, time-stamped. The dashboard camera from my own vehicle showed the same trajectory. I walked the board through the GPS logs, each acceleration, each pause, each stop directly correlating with prior warnings she'd sent via email. Emails were next. Each one began politely. "Please ensure children remain off the lawn," escalating into threats. "If the rules aren't followed, I'll handle it personally." I paused on that one. Room went silent. Even Karen's lips twitched. Then came the expert affidavits. Deputy Torres confirmed tire marks and gravel displacement. Dr. Patel's survey clearly marked the public easement where my son had been. The regulator's statement cited multiple state code violations. I leaned back. "Everything here is documented. Chain of custody intact. Subpoena ready. And in case you're wondering about HOA insurance, lapsed 2 weeks prior to the incident." The room shifted. Karen's eyes darted toward the exit. Her board allies exchanged nervous glances. "Your Honor," I added dryly, "or in this case the board of directors, the question is simple. Who bears responsibility?" Karen opened her mouth. Nothing came out. I continued, methodical calm. "This is not about anger. This is about accountability. Every action, every attempt to hide the truth, every deleted file has been recovered, time-stamped, verified, and catalogued. The law doesn't bend for pride, and the community deserves protection." She finally spoke, voice trembling, defensive. I didn't mean—" "You didn't stop," I said. "You didn't follow protocol. You didn't respect boundaries, and now you've cost a life. The law sees that clearly." The board whispered amongst themselves. Karen tried to interject again. I held up a hand. "No further comment until after the meeting. Your defense is documented. I will submit it to the county attorney." The air was thick. Some neighbors cried. Others whispered about lawsuits. Every piece of evidence I presented was on paper, on screen, and unarguable. Karen's arrogance had been her undoing. By the end of the session, the board voted unanimously to remove her as HOA president, suspend her privileges, and forward the documentation to the local authorities. Every HOA member present had signed acknowledgement of the incident. Karen left the room without a word, pearls slipping through her fingers like sand. I didn't follow. No confrontation, just facts verified and undeniable. Later, Lisa called. "You did everything right. Evidence airtight. No emotion, just precision. The authorities won't touch this lightly." I thought of my son. The grief didn't vanish, but the justice, the meticulous documentation, the undeniable proof, it felt like a shield for the neighborhood, and for the memory of a life cut too short. In the quiet aftermath, I reflected on boundaries, responsibility, and community. One person's hubris doesn't just harm a family. It harms everyone around them. Systems exist not to punish whims, but to uphold order. And when someone abuses them, accountability is inevitable. I placed the folder on my desk, next to my son's favorite model airplane. The neighborhood was quiet again, but it was different now. Safer, transparent, measured. And in that calm, I made one final note. Document everything. Protect your family. Stand for what's right.